I was so drawn to you from the very beginning. I knew that we were going to be meeting a million characters, and I love a whodunit. But the thing is, anytime that your character was walking on screen, you may have had a tray of something, probably vodka. Um, not it's not because the vodka that I was just like, I want to know where she's going
Mm,
because there's something you know, she's described as like a good time, a lot of fun, but there's something about um what you do with Sheila that I just wanted to like sit down and talk to her all the
mm.
time, every single time. And I have to say the moment when you get to do that really big scream on the bench where you just go, no, that every
Oh,
time they cut to that, I laughed so loud. It's so big, it's so like opposite of what the White House, you know what I mean? It's just like everybody's like so buttoned up and so stuffy, and it's just this honest of emotion that I just love. So long story short, thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I love the
uh,
show so much.
absolutely. And thank you for all of that too.
Of course.
That's great.
um I guess the first thing I wanted to ask you was the first line that you have is when we see you come in and you say there someone tells you there's been an incident upstairs,
Mm.
and you sort of very conspiratorially say an incident, and your voice from the first time we meet you, your voice drops down a little bit, and I feel like that informs us so much of maybe Sheila's perspective, of maybe what she wants. I guess I wanted to know what your point of view of Sheila was from like kind of your first impression of her.
Yeah. I mean, my very first impression of her was based on the scenes that I first got, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
didn't get the full script from the beginning.
Okay.
So I received select scenes.
Okay.
And I received the scene where she goes off on AB,
Mm.
you and that climax to F you, AB. I received the first scene, the Can I Smoke in Here?
Mm-hmm.
know. And then I received the scene where she starts talking about Nan Cox. Nan Cox is a drinker, and
Mm.
all of that. And then she finally kind of confesses, well, some people probably say the same thing about me.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was my invitation and first exploration of Sheila. And so I was just first drawn to her personality.
Mm-hmm.
I loved her dialogue. I was drawn to her humor,
Yeah.
loved the writing.
Yeah.
I could not believe that it was written by a white man. I was like, oh my
Oh,
gosh.
it was? I didn't even know
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. And I just loved her. I saw a vision of her. I immediately fell in love with her. I immediately want to play her. And so as I started combing back the layers of like, oh my gosh, she's funny. Oh my gosh, she's hilarious. And oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh, like there's these unexpected moments with her that would just be so amazing to play as a role, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also felt like, okay, what is driving her, right? Like
Yeah.
motivating her, what's inside of her, and as an actor, I first go to the given circumstances, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
okay, she's an alcoholic for a reason. There's no one on earth, I think, that just is an alcoholic, right?
Right.
There's some reason. So I felt like it was a part of my job to dig deeper. Why? Why?
Yeah.
Also, what does the White House represent for her? I later, much later in the process, after we were already filming, uh, got this part of the script about the Waffle House to the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really beautiful. And I loved that our creator, Paul William Davies, wrote that monologue because I felt like it showed a lot more about her backstory and how she got here and how this was really a dream for her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then it also begs the question of how did she make it in? Like, how was she
Yeah.
hot? She's so kind of she's so much fighting against the culture of the White House, and yet it's also her dream to work in the White House. And so I
Hmm.
felt like as an actor, I wanted to explore that dichotomy
Yeah.
between this being like all that she's ever dreamt of, but also her feeling like a star that wants to break out, but having to conform,
Yeah.
right? To conform to a certain level of decorum, of rules, of regulations,
Hmm.
and that to me is a real struggle. It's an internal struggle that she lives with every.
Mm.
And so I really wanted to explore that as well through my performance. And, and I think that that's something that we all can relate to as well, right? Like who you think you are, who you feel like you are
Yeah.
inside, what society says you are, or how you're allowed to be.
Oh yeah, like I felt like she continually surprised me because that Waffle House to White House moment is so resonant because because we hear how they talk about her, they're putting onto her what they think about her, and whether she does it to other people or not, maybe it's just a personal thing, she's bucking against that. And I was so fascinated about how, she sort of idolizes this place and loves what it represents. I think that's actually a really beautiful through line for her. And it's not just you do such a beautiful job of, like, on the surface this could have been just like, well, she's just a wacky drunk person. But I never thought that she was a wacky drunk person. I could tell that there was something, there was like a sadness there a little bit, that if you have to go into a game room and do this many shots of vodka in the dark. I don't know. There's something about, I'm not really articulating, but it's just sort of, it's, I don't know. It has a lot of weight to it, I will say. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And
Yeah.
yeah, as an actor, that's a part of the exploration, right? Like those
Yeah.
are given circumstances. She drinks not one sip, not two sips, the whole bottle,
Yeah.
as you said, in a
Yeah.
dark room by herself, so then it begs all these questions. And as the actor, that's my job, right? It's my
Hmm.
job to ask endless questions about her. And then it's my job to create the answers if
Yeah.
they're not already given, which a lot of times they're not on the page. A lot of times that's a part of the craft, right? That we're
Yeah.
creating.
I read in an interview where you went to AA meetings, you watched a lot of, like, you dug into a lot of research and you watched like documentaries, or maybe you said films, forgive me, but I guess I wanted to know what was, from maybe a nonfiction standpoint of learning about alcoholism, what is something that you really latched onto?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I really latched onto that I started digging deeper into was functional alcoholism.
Mm,
Because I think stereotypically when people think a person is drunk, they're stumbling and they're swirling their words and they can't see straight and
hmm.
and like there's no way that they are going to be functioning in a job
Yeah.
and certainly not at the White House.
Hmm.
Right. So it became really curious for me to understand functional alcoholism, to
Mm,
understand how does a person keep a job, and actually fulfill that job
yeah.
and actually, or maybe even be promoted in that job, right? But all the while be drunk and maybe
Hmm.
be drunk when people don't even realize that they're drunk.
Yeah.
Right? And so that to me was really fascinating to dig deeper, and learn more. And so you were right, documentaries is what I was watching. So I was going on YouTube, I was watching
Mm,
people personal experiences and journeys and them talking about their struggle with alcoholism, them talking about how they would, there was one woman I remember watching and she would talk about how she would sneak liquor everywhere, everywhere, and it
mm.
would look like apple juice. It would look like this, that, like in water
Oh
bottles,
wow.
all kinds so that she could drink all through the day. And she described what it did to her body, how she felt, but she was very much functioning. And when I went to AA meetings, and was
Mm.
getting to know other real people and their stories, there was one guy who was a truck driver, who was a professional truck driver, big mass truck. And he talked about how he is drunk all day long.
Oh my God.
So that became really fascinating to me. So, and then as an actor, you kind of have to balance it out, right? Like the reality of it versus the comedy of it,
Hmm.
and like, okay, where are these places that are just really funny? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like really funny and over the top. And then where are the places that's like more internal, or
Yeah.
more subtle? And then I also wanted to know, how does it feel? Like our show takes place over the course of many, many, many hours. So
Yeah.
like what does it feel like to sip one sip as opposed to two sips, as opposed to a whole bottle at 9 a.m. versus 9 p.m. versus 3 p.m. and then you take another sip and so like this progression as far as her body, how she feels. Like there's one line where she says, "I'm drunk right now." They're like,
Yeah.
"Where do I feel it? I feel it everywhere," right? So, so all of those, it was really about like kind of deconstructing all of that
Yeah.
from an honest point of view.
Okay.
And of course, combining that with the humor of it.
Well, I mean, the show itself does such an incredible job of, and my God, the editing of this thing blows my mind. And it's you as an ensemble really do an incredible job of it's such a cliche to say like walking that thin line, but it's just like it is so unbelievably funny, but also if you think about each individual characters, there's a lot of really real shit going on there. So um that is something I wanted to ask about because of how the show is structured, because there are so many cutaways, repeated cutaways, um and it made me kept thinking about how what we see in terms of reenactment may not be the truth. It's a slanted point of view next to something that is an honest point of view. I guess like how do you kind of like burrow through that and wade through that to make something that is very honest to you?
Yeah, I mean, it took me weeks, I think, to dissect
Like a
all the different
like a
versions.
big board, like a murder
Oh
board trying to
yeah.
find like okay. Yeah.
I mean, there's this video of me on Instagram with like a huge stack of just papers. I mean, like all I carried around was papers and scripts, and I had whole documents that were probably 50 pages just outlining the timeline and like, okay, she
Mm,
did this, and then there's this version, but then this script, episode two says the same story, but it's like a whole other version. And then episode four has
yeah.
a whole other version. So for me, it was really almost like being like a detective,
Active.
like cup, right? Like
Yeah.
we had our own cup to figure out, okay, what's the truth? What's not the truth? What's my imagination of the
Yeah.
truth? What's my, just fabricated presentation of the truth?
Yeah.
But in a way, it's like I feel like that was once I got a hold of it, because I mean, that was a feat.
Yeah.
It felt like a marathon. It definitely did. But it was also exciting too, right? Like how
Hmm.
often in real life are you seeing the same story from so many different angles? And then adding on, right? And so, as an actor, and especially in a comedy, I mean, that
Yeah.
was like comedy gold to be able to do all these versions of the truth.
Like my husband and I started watching it and we were like 5, maybe 10 minutes into the first episode. And he's like, oh my God, there's so many characters. And he's like, there's so much going on. And I was like, and we both acknowledged like how obviously it's very purposeful because it's sort of, you sort of as a viewer get this kind of freedom to let go and let these characters kind of like grab you by the arm and like shove you around and it was a really unique um viewing experience. And if I figure I have that experience watching it, I can't imagine what y'all are doing,
Oh yeah.
um, you know, homelandy trying to piece everything together. Um, I wanted to ask about the confrontation that you have with AB because he says something to you. He says, "You're not a fucking jester," which just thinking of that line and knowing the character that is such a that hurts my feelings as somebody who just watches it. But then the way that you say, "I'm trying to give this house a little life," like your voice is almost shaking and it's like a plea. It's a really powerful line. And I guess I wanted to know, like, reaching that boiling point for her, I imagine there's a lot of frustration and resentment. She's probably never spoken to AB like this before. He's probably never spoken to her like that. I guess I just wanted to know, working on that scene, what was that like? Because I think it's a really standout moment, especially for me. I thought that was wonderful.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ooh, I feel like you're taking me
Sorry,
back.
I'm just like, here's this, and this. Sorry, that was
Yeah. I mean, wow. Well, here's the interesting thing. We did that scene first with
first. Oh, okay,
Andre
sorry.
Brower. I did
Oh, okay.
this with
All right.
Andre, and that was incredibly climactic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was incredibly dynamic. It was incredibly painful. I mean, we did it many times, but for me, that line, and I appreciate you highlighting that line because it's that moment in the scene for me that's like just the javelin just going
Mm,
all the way in, right?
mm,
Because and even actually now I think about it, when I first met with Shondaland about this project before having been cast, and there were maybe five of us, and I was sharing my take on the show, my take on this role, and I brought up that line
mm-hmm,
specifically um, because as an African American, that line carries so much weight. Being a jester, is like there's so much history
mm-hmm,
in that, and kind of painful history in that. And so for her to be called that, it's like kind of the ultimate, um, yeah, like he could not have disrespected her more.
mm-hmm,
And yet she has this indomitable spirit, right? Like trying to rise above the pain and trying
mm,
to rise above, the oppression or depression or suppression, right? Like her spirit tries so hard to rise above it. And she, and then doing it again with Giancarlo, right? Like I was
mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh, I have to do like that, like giving birth. I'm like, oh my God, I have to give birth again, and this time with another actor. But like, of course, Giancarlo Esposito is so amazing and so wonderful, that we were then able to have our version of it, which was quite different than the
Mm,
version that Andre Brower and I did. But even in that, I mean, he's a generous actor and he kept asking me, like, is there anything you need? And I was saying the same thing to him. Is there anything you need, in this scene to really, get you there? And there were certain looks, there were certain this, like as an actor, you feed off of all of the stimuli,
mm-hmm.
right? Like it could be a clink of a wine glass in the distance
Yeah.
that I may put a historical meaning on, right? And then that helps to fuel me in the scene. And so actually, as he was saying it, I was looking down at the plates
Mm,
and the plates, and what came up for me was slavery, because slaves helped to build the White House. There's a
mm-hmm.
very long history as far as blacks in the White House. It wasn't always, working and being paid. It was
Yeah.
also as unpaid enslaved labor. And that word jester goes very far back. And so as he's saying this word, I'm also looking at what I feel is the history of it
Oh,
all,
wow.
right? Of the very place where we are.
Yeah.
And, and like I said, and I just kind of allowed that to affect me, I allowed it to go in really deep, but then also like, there's a Bible scripture that says, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I
Hmm.
felt like for her that she needed to reach for a joy that was beyond this, right? Beyond
Yeah.
AB. Like, I can't let even this pain, I can't let it kill me. I can't
Yeah.
let it kill me. And so, when she comes back with that line, the joy, right? Like, I'm just trying to give this house a little life.
Hmm.
And and to me, what I lock into is that that's a big part of her purpose, right? Like, people are judged all the time. You're
Yeah.
too loud, you're too whatever. Like, you're always making jokes. Sit down,
Hmm.
shut up, all these things. Dim down, dim down. It doesn't take all that. And even in that scene, he says to her, stop singing,
Yeah.
stop dancing, stop flirting with Hugh Jackman. And for me, these are all just like these micro cuts, right? Like, who
Hmm.
I am, the essence of who I am is inappropriate to you, is
Yeah.
unacceptable to you. And like, we live with that in our lives all the time. I'm sure you've experienced that, where who I am or who I feel I am is not validated, right?
Yeah.
Or somehow wrong. And so I felt that for Sheila, but also I felt like she was sharing her heart. Like, all I'm trying to do is bring life here.
Yeah.
Hey, like, that's my heart.
Mm.
That's my purpose. And sometimes when a person especially is like maybe judged or marginalized, she's got all these flaws, sometimes it's hard to see the purity of a person's heart, especially
Yeah.
when they're flawed and they've got all these things going on. But for me, that was the moment where she actually shared her heart in defiance as well as in vulnerability.
Yeah, there's because the line even as written um is not just like an fu. It's not like you don't, it's not just like, being angry at him. It's just sort of like I'm trying to give you a perspective of what I am doing, because they literally yank her off the floor where she is, to me, spreading a lot of joy in an evening that is already so fraught with a lot of everything. And I totally understand what you mean. Like, I'm a very loud, very swishy person. And I feel like sometimes other people, whether they say it to you or they say it to you with like their eyes or a look that they give you, they try to shove you in a a certain direction, instead of just letting you be who you are. And especially in a show that is a lot about, ultimately, when we learn by the end, it's a lot about certain people fighting for traditional things versus things that things that are new. I don't know, there's sort of a lot of parallels between exactly what you're saying and like the show as a whole, which I think is really incredible. um yeah, ever since I've seen that scene, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. It's just a really uh human,
Mm.
beautiful moment.
Thank
um
you for acknowledging that. I
of
appreciate
course.
that. And also, I think that her coming off the floor, like, there's this line she has early on, which she's telling Cup, this is the show, this is the
Yeah.
dance, this is why we work here, this is why
Hmm.
I work here,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, that helped to heighten the stakes. Like, this night is the night that she looks forward to all year
Yeah.
long, right? All
She
year.
wants to
She's there
share
like,
it. Like, look at it.
right, this
Yeah.
is the dance, this is the show. And so to feel like the closest to a star of her own show
Mm-hmm.
and then to be smashed down like that,
Mm-hmm.
is devastating, right?
Yeah.
And so I felt like, okay, if I can heighten the stakes to that point, then that smackdown, is what can really have that weight. And so I'm really glad that that came across.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about the last episode because it's very rare for an ensemble of this size to be quite literally in one room with each other. Like my favorite movie, probably the reason why I love the show so much is my favorite movie is Clue. This movie is like Clue but on steroids.
Mhm.
I guess I wanted to know what that was kind of like to have everybody all in one room because I think that was a really rare thing, and it's really exciting for an audience, I think, to see.
It was incredibly beautiful and
Mm,
powerful to all share the same space at the same time.
yeah.
Very much. Um, I didn't see it coming when we were doing rehearsals because we don't normally have rehearsal, but because there were so many characters and because our lovely Uzo Aduba had pages and pages and pages and pages, right, of monologues nonstop through almost that whole
Yeah.
episode,
My God.
right? Bless her. And so it required a certain level of a rehearsal, right? To be
Hmm.
able to do that. And so that was our very first time all in one room, our first day of rehearsal for that. And there were certain places that she got to in the monologue where it's talking about AB, and all I could think of was Andre Brower.
Mm,
And by the point where we filmed the last episode, we had already lost him.
mm,
And so I think that we all collectively started to feel that like here's this homage, and I wouldn't be surprised honestly if our writer maybe he felt that too as he
mm.
was writing this because episode 8 is the one episode that we didn't get until later.
Okay.
And so it was, there's this point where we're all together and Cup's character is paying homage to A.B. Winter.
Hmm.
Um, but I know for me as an actor, that personalization just got real deep as far as Andre Brower, and I felt like it was a shared moment for all of us, right? And so
Mm.
here we've been doing this comedy the whole time, but it just landed. I think it landed in such a communal way, um, that we had a chance to just really honor, even in silence, this life, whether it's A.B. Winter or it's Andre Brower, that is no longer with us. And and I think when you lose someone like that, whether as a character or whether as a person or as an actor, it makes you feel the holiness of now, the holiness of presence, and the fact that we were all able to share presence with one another during that time made it even more meaningful for us.
Yeah, when she's speaking about AB and Giancarlo, I think it's like the perspective changes or something, and he's physically in the room.
Mhm.
I got chills seeing that because this is a Cordelia Cup is a woman who is um you know trying to solve this case in service of a person who is no longer there, and it's something about him being in the same physical space as everyone in the cast, just even as the characters, was very sort of emotional. It was very unexpected for me that I did not expect that to happen. Um, yeah. Okay. Um, I guess just one last silly question before I let you go. Um, I'm a fan of Hugh Jackman. I thought Hugh Jackman was a such a good-looking man since the first time I saw him. I guess I wanted to know if you knew what Sheila's entryway into her crush of Hugh Jackman was. Like, was she a secret X-Men fan? Was she there's a romantic comedy with him and Ashley Judd from like the late 90s called Someone Like You. That is very, he looks very good in that movie. It maybe Sheila loves his singing voice. I guess what is the sort of gateway for the Hugh Jackman crush?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because on set when we were preparing, when I was preparing to start getting into these Hugh Jackman scenes,
Yeah.
I started watching The Greatest Showman.
Oh,
And
I love
I was
that movie.
literally on set, like before they would say action, I was literally like singing my heart out and dancing and like watching his performances and and I felt because that was the same question, like is it Wolverine? Like what is it?
Yeah,
Right. But but I kind of feel like Sheila's like this closeted
like
musical
musical
theater
theater.
girl. Right.
Oh, I love
I
that.
feel like in the essence, like if she were to take off that bow tie and take off that suit, I feel like she'd just be doing pirouettes and grand jetés and leaps and singing to the top of her voice all through the state dinner.
Hey,
So
that'll bring joy. That's very in line with who
that'll
she
bring
is.
joy.
Yeah.
So that was my vision, and that's the part of Hugh Jackman that I locked into. So
Oh
when
my
she
God.
said, "Oh my God, I love him," it was
Yeah.
that out of him that I felt like she was completely in
Ah,
love.
that's incredible. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being so
You're
generous with
so
me.
welcome.
I just love the show. I love you on it. I was so like, I felt like a weirdo. I messaged one of the other editors on the website because we were watching it at the same time. And I was just like, I'm obsessed with Sheila. I'm just so obsessed with her. And she was like, totally same. And there was a point where we were just like, when we knew we were gonna have a chance to talk to you, I was like, I'm taking it because I need it. I'm just so in love with her. I love what she represents.
Uh,
Um, she's like a character that I think of after the show is over. I was like, I hope she's okay. I hope she's, you know,
finds her way.
yeah, finds her way.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much. I'm about to
yes.
hop into my next
Oh, I'm
interview.
so sorry. Yeah, please
Oh, it's no
shut me up.
problem. Joey, it's so great to meet you
Yeah,
and for taking the time. I
you too.
really enjoyed our time together
Yeah,
today.
good. Have a good rest of your day.
You
All
too.
right,
Bye.
bye.